We are constantly, well, battered by external forces, aren't we? Whether it's the financial markets going wild or just that relentless news cycle, or even just personal stuff, worrying about health, the future. Finding a truly secure place, somewhere solid to stand, it can feel almost impossible sometimes. Okay, let's unpack this. We've been looking at sources centered around this really ancient promise, a promise of profound protection, real peace. It's often called the Psalm of Refuge. It feels almost like an instruction manual, really, for dealing with chaos by radically shifting, well, where you put your trust.
Exactly. And our mission in this deep dive is to distill the essence of that wisdom. We want to understand the mechanics, How can placing confidence, real trust in something unchanging actually offer practical security today in this world? We're looking for that aha moment, the thing that shifts security away from, say, wealth or tech,
Yeah.
and anchors it somewhere internal, an inner dwelling place. What's fascinating here is, well, just how counterintuitive this whole idea is to our modern mindset. We're obsessed with external control, right? Prediction. And this ancient text, it speaks directly to our 21st century anxieties, but offers a completely different kind of defense.
Yeah, it jumps right in, doesn't it? With this idea of like radical protection, almost
Yeah.
aggressive, it lays the foundation straight away. The person who dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty.
Hmm.
So the core thing isn't just believing in God, it's dwelling there. It
Yeah.
seems to require an active commitment. Like the text says, I will say of the Lord, he is my refuge and my fortress. In him will I trust.
That declaration, my refuge and my fortress, that's key. It establishes the precondition for everything else that follows. The person isn't asking for protection as much as affirming a relationship, a chosen residence, you could say. It's a cognitive shift, really. Identifying God as your primary security, your infrastructure.
And the promises that flow from that are, well, they're just breathtaking.
Mhm.
And so specific. They seem to cover everything we worry about. Even now, we're talking deliverance from the snare of the fowler, sudden traps maybe, and from the noisome pestilence, which sounds a lot like widespread deadly disease. Very relevant.
Very. And the protection described, it's so comprehensive. It talks about sensory coverage, like being covered with his feathers, and his truth acting as a functional shield and buckler, real defense.
It also speaks directly to, conquering that paralyzing anxiety. It says, Thou shalt not be afraid for the terror by night, nor for the arrow that flieth by day. So threats you see coming, threats you don't. It covers both.
Which leads to that incredible image of safety, even right in the middle of a disaster. That extraordinary guarantee, 1,000 shall fall at thy side, and 10,000 at thy right hand, but it shall not come nigh thee. I mean, the context is clearly devastation all around, but the person dwelling there remains untouched.
But let's be clear here. That protection, and it even mentions angelic guidance, right? He shall give his angels charge over thee.
Yes, angelic charge.
Right. It's not just some like magic charm you get automatically. The text makes it conditional.
Precisely. That's the pivot point. It's given because, and this is the quote, one has made God, even the Most High, thy habitation. So the promise isn't really for those who just, know about the psalm. It's for those who have actively made this presence their permanent chosen residence, their habitation. Habitation means where you live, where your identity is rooted, where you instinctively return when things get tough.
Okay, so the summary then wraps up not just with a general blessing, but with this very personal assurance of rescue. The text actually shifts, and it's God speaking directly, promising things like, I will deliver him, I will be with him in trouble, providing honor, satisfaction.
Yeah, the relationship is sealed right there with promises of rescue, presence, and lasting fulfillment. It's deeply personal.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. We've laid out the ancient claim, right? But how do we bridge that gap between promises about, arrows and pestilence and our very real 21st century anxieties, financial collapse, job insecurity, health crises? How do we apply this profound guarantee to actually strengthen our trust today?
Well, the ancient wisdom gives a pretty clear path. It says true protection isn't ultimately in physical safeguards, not in better firewalls or bigger armies or thicker walls. It's entirely in the sustained act of closeness, intimacy. The core shift is this. If you can't control the chaos out there, you have to focus on establishing an unshakable peace in here.
Right. Let's talk about that first focus. Dealing with uncertainty, peace over panic. That phrase, terror by night, that perfectly captures it, doesn't it? The sleepless nights worrying about money or health scares,
Right.
things you can't fix right now.
Exactly. And the application here, it calls us towards finding inner peace, real courage, by consciously practicing trust instead of defaulting to that modern habit, which is exhausting, of trying to control every single possible outcome. Think of it like this. If the external threat is the arrow that flieth by day, this internal dwelling, this trust, allows you to disarm the fear of the arrow, maybe even before it arrives. It's about transforming that desperate need for control into, well, genuine peace.
Okay, that makes the dwelling part feel less like just a nice idea and more like
Yeah.
a deliberate, ongoing mental commitment,
Right.
a practice. But let's tackle a potential friction point. We all know people, good people, who genuinely try to live this way. And they still face job loss. They still get sick. Pandemics hit everyone. So how does this source square that promise of, apparently, complete deliverance with the reality that everyone suffers?
That's a crucial question. And it brings us straight to the second focus, grounding identity and security. The protection being promised here, it's primarily spiritual, existential even. That's why the sources emphasize that it outweighs physical guarantees. The security is rooted deeper. It's in God's unchanging presence, his love. The idea is that while the external structure, your job, your health, the economy might wobble or even crumble, your internal foundation, your core identity, your spirit, that remains intact because it's anchored somewhere else. So this wisdom, it doesn't deny hardship exists. It absolutely acknowledges that destruction might be happening all around you. 1,000 shall fall at thy side. But the guarantee is that destruction doesn't get the final say over your spirit, your ultimate destiny, if you are intentionally dwelling in that presence. The physical protection seems secondary, in a way, to the spiritual protection which provides that lasting resilience.
That really reframes things. In a world where we often root our security in, I don't know, algorithms, insurance policies, medical tech, we're essentially trusting things that are temporary,
Yeah.
perishable. This text is saying, build your foundation on the bedrock, not just on the temporary scaffolding.
And that leads directly, beautifully really, into the third focus, the relational aspect. This isn't a formula. It's not a checklist. It's fundamentally about an active, love-driven relationship. God promises protection, the text says, for those who cling to him in love and seek him sincerely. The commitment has to be mutual. When it says, because he hath set his love upon me, that emphasizes intentional affection, right? Real dedication, not just following rules. So it's not some transactional deal, I do this so God owes me security. It's presented as this dynamic, mutual relationship that provides refuge and strength precisely because it requires you to be actively engaged, to be present in that secret place.
So what does this all mean? Wrapping this up, the takeaway feels pretty clear. While the world is definitely full of threats, real anxieties, volatility, we're assured of refuge, of strength. But only when we choose to actively reside in that intentional space of trust. It offers a path to security that, well, that can't be touched by market crashes or tech failures.
And that security hinges entirely on an active, deliberate choice. It's not passive. It requires moving from just knowing about the promises, passive knowledge, to active trust, choosing to dwell there daily. And setting one's love, one's focus upon that source of refuge, it really demands full engagement.
The guarantee is there. It's offered. But the choice to make this secret place, your actual lived-in habitation, that choice is entirely yours. So the question for you listening is, how will you apply this information in your life? How will you move from maybe fear of the external chaos towards cultivating that genuine, lasting trust in this internal, unchanging refuge?